All right, good evening and welcome to Books and Books in Coral Gables. Thank you for all for coming down tonight. Quick announcement for our internet audience at home. If at any time during tonight's presentation you would like to purchase a copy of Congressman Gutierrez's book in English or in Spanish, just call the number on your screen. We'll take care of that for you. We'll have the Congressman sign your book, and we'll mail it to you for free wherever you are in the United States. And that goes for all 50 states, not just Illinois. Also, during the Q&A, if there's any question you would like to ask the Congressman, call into the store and we'll get that question asked for you. This evening, Books and Books is honored to present Congressman Luis Gutierrez and his new book, Still Dreaming, My Journey from the Barrio to Capitol Hill. Congressman Gutierrez has represented the Illinois 4th Congressional District since 1993. Here to introduce him, we have a very special guest. He has represented the Florida 26th since 2013. Please welcome to the microphone Congressman Joe Garcia.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I've represented my district only a short amount of time, and Luis has represented the people of Chicago and Illinois for a very long time. And it is, when I think of congressmen that I admire, I think of Luis Gutierrez. He is a fighter. He is someone who stands up for an issue when no one wants to stand up. There are no big interest groups here. There is no big lobbying campaign. There's nothing but a lot of blood, sweat, toil, and tears when you engage in this issue. You literally represent those people who will probably never, ever be able to vote for you. But you stand there, and I've watched Luis do it for decades. In South Florida, we had the great benefit of having a community of immigrants, but we also had NACARA. And folks don't know that Luis Gutierrez was a central part in getting that done. Put it together, rallied the forces for it. And in fact, because the Republicans ran the House, he had to have, Luis Gutierrez's law had to have someone else's name on it. That's the kind of person he is. He is always willing to let others lead so that the issue can move forward. So I want to welcome him here. He was gracious enough to grace South Florida and talk about his book, his experiences. But I want South Florida to also know we have a great friend in Luis Gutierrez. There is a few issues on the House floor where I don't have the occasion to ask him what he's doing and how he's thinking about it, and how he can impact us. And I want to finally close with what we are. Perhaps no community in America, maybe save New York, is more comprised of immigrants than South Florida. My district is almost 73% Hispanic in terms of people who live there, not voters. And the work that Luis Gutierrez has done for decades in standing up for immigrants makes us all better and makes us all have a better chance at a future. And that makes us be part of a great community. And this great community would not exist but for Americans, great Americans like Luis Gutierrez. Luis, thank you very much.
Well, let's have a little fun because I wrote the book so that people could also learn but also be entertained. I think that they're not mutually exclusive, that you can read a book, you can learn, it could be educational, and at the same time. I like to think it's Friday night and we have some wine here, right? And we're having a beer and you're telling stories. And when you tell stories, you can even laugh, right, about the girl that said no to the prom. Because it happened a few years ago, you're over it, and it kind of becomes funny, although it might have been a sad occasion in your life. There are things you can't laugh about because they're serious. So we start the book with the firebombing of my house and the Molotov cocktail coming through my home it was a nice kind of Indian summer night. You don't have those here in Miami, but we have them in October and in early November, when it could be 55, 60 degrees and the heater's not on. And we like those nights. And I was asleep. I had just run, and it's interesting, right? I had just run for Democratic committeeman of the 32nd Ward. against Dan Rostenkowski, then the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And you would think that if you're chairman of the Ways and Means Committee and you're advisor to president and you're in the top echelons of the Democratic Party and it's 20 years after you've passed the Civil Rights Act of 1963, 18 years after you passed the Voting Rights Act, that it wouldn't be so audacious that a black man would be the Democratic nominee for mayor of the city of Chicago. But that's what Dan Rostenkowski and all the Democrats did. They said, oh, ganó el negro. No, some things are black and white. Some things, well, Luis, things, there's texture. No, some things are as simple as that. He was a black man. He was a congressman, Harold Washington. He won the Democratic nominee, and the Democratic establishment couldn't live with itself. Because number one, he was going to break down the Democratic establishment and all their privileges and all their prerogatives, which they had given themselves, by giving some parts of the city lots of services while denying other parts. And they said, just fairness alone means that there will be less, because now it will be fair. And that's the man I supported. So I ran against Dan Rostenkowski, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And 6 months after I ran, a Molotov cocktail came through. So violence is part of the fight for human and civil rights and for change. It was in the South during the civil rights movement when hundreds of homes were bombed. And so I start with that to remind people that there still is a struggle. And then we like to talk about my growing up. And quite simply, it's like this. I think I can synthesize it, right? I mean, I grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. Some would call it un arrabal. There were a lot of roaches and rats and rodents, and there were. There was a lot of peeling paint, and there was a lot of plumbing that didn't work. And it wasn't that my parents were dirty and filthy people, but it's where we lived, and it's where the majority of Puerto Ricans lived. Now that we rise from that to a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment where I got a cot when I was 12 in the hallway, pues tú sabes cómo son las cosas. Ya el nene tiene 12 años, no puede estar en el mismo cuarto con su hermana. Y como es la nena, she gets the bedroom, and you get the hallway by the front door, y te ponen una cortina in the cot. And that's the way things are. But that's growing up in the barrio, right? That's a story of growing up in the barrio. And so we talk about that. I was fully bilingual, right? I'm sorry. Everybody spoke. My parents hablaban puro español, y yo hablaba puro inglés. Y nos entendíamos perfectamente. That's why I keep telling them, don't fear about English, right? Because my mom and dad only spoke Spanish, but it sounds like their son never had a problem acquiring the English language. I don't think so, right? As a matter of fact, I actually wrote the book in English, and the translation is in Spanish. And when I speak in Spanish on Univision or Telemundo, I'm not like Joe Garcia, right? I have to actually translate it. I have to think, pienso en inglés, ¿cuál es la palabra en español que voy a usar? So we write about growing up. It was a beautiful experience. There were gangs. And I remember one time when one of the Harrison gents, that's a real gang. This isn't from West Side Story, knocked me on the top of the head because they had just killed one of the senior members of the gang, Ismael, who liked me. And he always would protect me. And they murdered him in the schoolyard at Newberry. And he hit me and says, he's not here to protect you anymore. And I remember when I got home, and I guess I was a little tearful, y me recuerdo mi papá, ¿a ti te pasó algo? Something happened to you? And kids en el barrio are extremely intelligent. Because under no conditions was I going to tell my dad that gangbanger hit me on the head. Because I know what my dad was going to do. ¿Qué va a hacer mi papá? Salir por esa puerta y meterle una pela. But gangs don't work one-on-one, right? They're not fair. Oh, he was going to kick their butt that night. The problem, what happens the next night, and the next night, and the next night? So I didn't tell him anything. He only learned about it later on in life. But that was my dad. He was a strong guy. I don't know, Joe Garcia, did your dad punch you in the arm just to show you when you were 15 that he was strong? Oh, where is he? He's right. Así me hacía. Ah, ¿tú te crees guapo? Boom, me metía un puño. I said, I guess I'm not so guapo anymore, right? Because the old man is kind of strong. Good to see you. Gracias, señor García, por mandarlo a su hijo al Congreso de los Estados Unidos. Y gracias por criar un enorme ejemplo de lo que debe ser el futuro de la política aquí. Gracias. Thank you so much. Y me honra con tu presencia aquí esta noche. So we tell these stories. But then I go to Puerto Rico, where I start writing about what? I'm too Puerto Rican to be American, because I grew up in a neighborhood donde todo el mundo me decía, tú eres puertorriqueño, tú eres puertorriqueño, tú eres puertorriqueño. I lived in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. I went to Puerto Rican weddings. I went to Puerto Rican baptisms. I went to a Puerto Rican mass. Everything was Puerto Rican, right? Caballeros de San Juan. Todo puertorriqueño. Los tríos que escuchábamos. If I heard Mi Niña Bonita one more time on the radio, I was going to go crazy. Because my mom used to always say what? When she saw gangbangers, Joe, you know what she said, Congressman? She said, esto no es mi tierra. When it snowed a lot, I know you don't have that here. And she said, oh, I'm never going to get to work today. No voy a llegar al trabajo toda esa nieve. You know what she said? Esta no es mi tierra. They would always be talking about, esta no es mi tierra. I know that sounds a little unusual for those who say, but you're citizens of the United States. You're Puerto Rican citizens. But you should never confuse citizenship with nationality. Ella era nacional de su patria, Puerto Rico. Y era incidentalmente ciudadana de los Estados Unidos. And you can't confuse the two. So she was always a national of Puerto Rico. So they finally went back. I remember getting off the airplane. And when I came here, thanks to Joe Garcia, I'm here tonight. Congressman Joe Garcia, I'm here tonight with you. We got off the plane and I said, Joe, it's hot here. I mean, it is December. You know, it's supposed to be a cool breeze in December. You know what it reminded me of? The first time I got off an airplane in San Juan. Because it was July. And July is supposed to be like this, guys. In Puerto Rico, it's like this in July. I remember getting off the plane. I never felt that tropical kind of heat that you feel tonight. Y yo le dije a mi papá, we spent 4 hours on Pan Am. 4 hours. He smoked every free cigarette they would give him. Remember, they used to give free cigarettes. And the flight attendants were nice, right? No, and I don't blame them. They hadn't taken away their pensions yet, right? They had pensions. They had retirement. They used to be able to travel with their families. Y todo estaba chévere. In the late 60s. Y fuimos en ese avión y mi papá me dice, I said, Dad, can you get me a Coke? No, we just spent 4 hours, 15 years and 4 hours on the plane. Y yo le hablaba puro inglés. Y me dice, estamos en Puerto Rico, aquí se habla español. And I thought, you could have let me in on this. For 15 years, this background noise was always, vamos a regresar, vamos a regresar, vamos a regresar. Well, you could have told me that maybe I should, you know, learn a little Spanish. Dice, entonces, me dice, la gente se va a creer que somos, I can't repeat the word because I know this is being repeated, right? But they won't understand de come mierda. That's what my dad said. Why? Because my dad had a sense of what? Propriety. Esto es Puerto Rico, aquí se habla español y la gente que habla en inglés porque se creen gente. But you know what? It was even worse because I was speaking Spanish. Can you imagine how those people laughed? Pues si yo maté el español. I mean, it's either speaking English or destruir el español. So I guess he'd rather I destroy Spanish trying. So I tell you all of this to say, I get to Puerto Rico. I'm going to tell you real quickly. So I get to Puerto Rico and maestro me dice, ¿y tú no tienes madre? Because I filled out the registration card. And I didn't know you had to use your mother's. I know everybody's saying, this is part of the United States. I know, but they do everything like a Latin American country in Puerto Rico. And you have to have your mother's maiden name. En tu licencia, en tu diploma, en todo. So my name was Luis Gutierrez, Gutierrez. You know, dependiendo del maestro, they would change my name. Mira, Congressman Garcia has to understand, not everybody had a nice name like Garcia. You know? With some nice vowels that was easy to pronounce, right? I had Gutierrez. So el maestro me dice, ¿cómo tú te llamas? I said, Luis. Y todo el mundo se puso a reír. So I went home crying, and my mom taught me my name. I'm 15 years old. Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. And I kept saying it. Y yo dije, pero eso me parece como galán de película, ese nombre. Y a los 15 años por fin So I went the next day, and she was just like you, and I went, hola. Mi nombre es Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. I was so proud of myself because I had practiced all night. And I said, ¿y cómo tú te llamas? And she went like this, Mister. That's what they call the teachers in Puerto Rico, Mister. It's from when the Americanos tried to force all the Puerto Ricans to learn English. They did, and then they gave up because they weren't ever going to learn it, right? You go to McDonald's, trate de hablarle en inglés and get a Big Mac. You're not going to get it. So they go like this. Me dice, mister. Sí, ¿qué te pasa, señorita? El gringo me está molestando. And I'm like going, gringo? Yo gringo? All my life. Right? I've been Puerto Rican. And I finally get to this island named Puerto Rico, where everybody's Puerto Rican, and I'm surrounded by only Puerto Ricans, and now I'm not Puerto Rican. Soy el gringo, el americanito, porque no hablo español. Se me ha mejorado un poquito desde aquel momento. So that's the way it was. I kept saying, so I'm too American to be Puerto Rican, but in the United States, in Chicago, I'm too Puerto Rican to ever be American. So I want to tell that story. I'm going to tell you just a couple of more, and then I'd like to say a couple other things. In the book, there's love, too. You got to put love in a book. You know, it's a simple story. It's a simple story about Zoraida. And I wanted to tell people about Zoraida. Zoraida, she shared with me for the book the wonderful story of Don Juan. You know qué era Don Juan? Su papá, bolitero. Y todo el mundo dice, that's organized crime. Not in my neighborhood. When I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, the bolitero could have been the milkman, right? He could have been the barber. Es que tú le dabas una peseta, 10 chavos, 15 chavos, $1 si lo tenía y si te pegaba, right? And you know what I like to say about my Congressman Garcia, you know what I like to say about my bolitero? Even if you have to criticize him later. You know what I like to say about my grandpa, my father-in-law? You know what? He worked for every cent he got. And everybody in the neighborhood respected him. Porque era Don Juan que vestía bien con su fedora. In the end, my father-in-law was so ahead of the curve that the state of Illinois put him out of business. Not by putting him in jail, but by starting the lottery to fund public education. I mean, what is the lottery? Una forma moderna de la bolita. No es otra cosa. It is nothing different. It's to fund education. And sorry, you know, I was after her. I'll tell you what. So I had to do two things. She left. And I said, girl, I'd like to know kind of how we're going to talk to each other because I'm not going to see you for 2 months. Are we going to write? Do you have a phone at your mother's house? Because there's no internet or any of that stuff, no Skyping. This was a long time ago. I know I look young, but I'm not that young. And so I write in the book, right? And she looks at me, she says, but Luis, you knew I was leaving. I'm starting a new life. I'm taking like, she said eraser, right? And I felt I was getting erased. And I'm going to Puerto Rico, I'm starting a new life. So I said, well, can I show up in a couple of months? Maybe you change your mind when I show up. So now I have to make money because I'm a university student. You know what I went and did? I drove a cab. I had only driven a car 3 weeks in my entire life at the age of 22. For 3 weeks. And now I'm behind one of those big cabs. You ever see Danny DeVito in the cab, those big yellow checker cabs? Ese tanque. And they put me. And I have to tell you something. The women would be especially kind to me. Porque se me montaban en el taxi y me decían, I want to go to Madison and Wentworth. And I would go, I'm sorry, but there's this girl in Puerto Rico, and I got to make some money before this other guy gets her. And the only thing I could do is driving a cab. So I'll give you a discount, but I really got to get there. So forgive me, I really don't know what. Tell me how to get there. I'll get you there. You don't have to tip me nothing. I just have to make some money. Are you kidding me? They would give me a big tip. Because now almost every passenger was part of what? Imagine, for a cab ride, you get to be part of a romance story. And you get to contribute to it. The guys weren't so much. But the women were pretty good. So I would specifically look for women to get in my cab. After a while, I learned, y se me quedó eso, tú sabes. Dije, no, ya yo no puedo hacer eso porque ya yo sé cómo caminar. So I finally get there. And ¿sabe cómo a mí me gusta la costumbre? Porque Puerto Rico es parte de Latinoamérica. ¿Sabe por qué? Porque cuando yo llego, primero, ¿quién te examina? La abuela. ¿Y qué tú haces, muchacho? ¿Y te graduaste de qué? ¿Y hay trabajo en esa cosa? ¿Y hay empleo? ¿Y se gana buena plata? She's only taking care of what? Her nieta that she loves, right? Come on, guys. Anybody Latino knows this happens. Y la mamá, and then the brothers, and then the older sister. And after about 3 hours of that, I said, Sarita, can we go to the corner store? Because I ain't like seen you in 2 months. And maybe we could walk alone to the corner store. She said, well, in Puerto Rico, we'll have to take my little sister and my little brother with us. I said, that's cool. So we walked to the corner store, and as we're walking back, we're in Limber. I remember compramos Limber. Qué rico. En los colmados ahí. Y compramos Limber de Doña Mary. Ella lo hacía en su casa, de Kool-Aid. Eran buenos los Limber. But my point is this. We're walking back, and I said to her, I said, well, it's been a couple of months, and I'd really like to come and see you next week, Saturday. And I got to go home to my mom and dad in San Sebastian. That's 3 hours away. But can I come back? I mean, do you think it's okay if I come back? I know you haven't seen me in 2 months. Is that all right? And she turned around, and she didn't say yes. You know what she told me? If you want to see me, you got to talk to my mom. Because my mom, she don't believe in that friend stuff. Either you are or you aren't. And you know what I said to myself? Gracias por las tradiciones. Si la mujer te dice a ti que hay que pedirle permiso a su mamá para visitarla, you're in. She said yes, sin decir sí. And I went to her mom, and I said, hola, doña Pella, mira que la hija. Pues puede venir los fines de semana. And that's how we got together. We came back to Chicago because I couldn't make a living there. I got elected to the Congress of the United States. You guys know about my life in the Congress of the United States. Immigrants are important to me. I'm going to end with this because I'd love to have a conversation with you. Let me tell you how I look at things. And you're important to us. Thank you. Thank you. Let me tell you how I look at things. If you have power and you have influence and you've been given a voice, don't waste it. Use it, especially for others, specifically for others. So when I see the President of the United States and I'm in the Oval Office with him, and even when he tells me to get off his back, and even when I have to get arrested outside, I want, you know when the hardest time to use power is? With friends. You know who the hardest people to give to? Friends. But you know what? I want every man in this room, right? Your wife has come to you at a quiet moment when you're shopping and te dice, tú no debiste haber dicho eso anoche, mi amor. And you go, y no te molesta porque sabes que te lo están diciendo con amor. I assure you, we tell him things with love. I want him to be a great president. I don't want him to be the president that deported 2 million people. I want to be the president that signed legislation for 11 million people to be free. That's what I want him to be. But he's not going to get there without our help. So, what's the arc, right? My mother and my father arrived in New York in 1952. What were the headlines in 1952 about Puerto Ricans? They were bringing tropical diseases to the city. And all the politicians were scurrying about to try to figure a way to stop them. That's the headlines. That they came to get on welfare, that they were criminals. You saw West Side Story. Is that a positive portrayal? I mean, we didn't even get the white gym shoes. They give us the black gym shoes. Everybody knows the bad guy's always dressed in. When you watch it, you're going to see I'm right. Así de negativo. They call us the Sharks. They did a movie named Jaws and scared the hell out of everybody 10 years later. No, they didn't call us the Jets. Everything was negative. That's how my mom arrived. You know how my mom got a coat? La Iglesia Católica le dio un abrigo. Because that was the welcoming center. El cura y la iglesia. Siempre ha sido así en la comunidad inmigrante, o es así también. El único centro que los inmigrantes controlan, la iglesia, because we don't control banks and we don't control anything else. But the church, it's usually on our side. They didn't speak the language, right? But think about that. When we arrived, we were bringing diseases. We were criminals. We were getting on welfare. And their son gets to sit in the Oval Office with the President of the United States to argue comprehensive immigration reform and gets to be here with you tonight. That's a pretty incredible arc. So when people say that the American dream, es una fantasía. No, it's a reality. We have to work now to make it a reality for more people. I want to say one last thing. I'm especially happy to be here tonight because I came to campaign for Joe Garcia when he lost. I was especially happy the second time around when he won. And I'm going to tell you something. No, and I wrote him a check 2 months ago. A mí no me gusta escribir cheques de 2,000 pesos a nadie. It's hard to raise it. But I had to give him the check because I know he needs it, because I know he's going to. I'm not turning this into a campaign stop. I just want to share with you the commitment. And when he told me to come down and visit him in his district, I was honored. And I'm honored to be here this evening with him. He has a wonderful bill. There's 192 co-sponsors of it for comprehensive immigration reform. I think it's a wonderful tribute to him that the House leadership would have appointed him to lead. Because that's the way it happens, right? Somebody saw. But you know what? Yo lo vi en él antes que ellos, so I already saw it. And they saw what I saw. They saw a leader. So it's wonderful to be here tonight. If you have power, use it to benefit others, right? Don't waste it. That's the kind of story I'd like to tell. My mom and dad came here, and they were treated very badly. Puerto Ricans were treated very badly. Go back where you came from. How many Puerto Ricans haven't heard that? Why don't you just go back where you came from? Where we're supposed to go back to Puerto Rico. Right? Go back where you came from. We hear it all the time. But you know what? Maybe there was nobody to stand up for my mom and my dad, but they have a son that can stand up for people who live in equal conditions that they live. Tú sabes, el trabajo mío en gran medida es un reflejo de lo que vivieron mi papá. And you know what? They were hurt. Well, today, I mean, they gave me a voice. I want to give honor to that voice that they gave me. I think they did a good job. They did a good job. You know, they didn't have financial wizards to help them, but they knew how to save money. They didn't have anybody tell them about Planned Parenthood, but they knew to only have 2 kids. No, they did. They were incredibly resourceful people. They didn't understand the language. In the book, you're going to see a photo of my mom and me. Ella salió de los cerros de Aguadilla cuando la mayoría de los días no tenía zapatos, y 10 años después, you couldn't tell the difference between her and Jacqueline Kennedy and the pictures in the book. No, that's an incredible transformation of a woman, right? And that's all I'm saying, que los que estaban a llegar, déjalos que se transformen también, como mi mamá se transformó y como nosotros casi todos en este cuarto. So I know you weren't in the room, Joe, but I want to say thank you. It was wonderful traveling here with you. I'm happy you're in the Congress of the United States. Let's give your congressman a round of applause for being here tonight with us. So, I'm sorry I took so long. I would love to answer some questions from people.
Folks, remember that if you have a question for the congressman, to raise your hand and let me get to you with the microphone so the internet audience at home can hear you. This gentleman's first.
Well, thank you very much. Let me tell you what I think. And I told Joe this in the airplane. We're going to get this done. In 2014, let me tell you something. You heard it here. 2014, the movement is so broad, it's so wide and so deep. It really is. The immigration reform movement is very, very powerful. And I think its power is going to overtake all of the other negative events. And Joe and I are going to be part. Él tiene suerte, porque llegó en el año correcto para firmarse la legislación. Tiene una suerte, muchacho. ¿Ah? But the last time was Barack Obama, tenía suerte también. Quizás va a tener la misma suerte. I'm not going to run for president of the United States. Let me tell you, I already figured it out. I made a commitment in Congress to do one thing, to talk about immigration. But let me just tell you, I remember there were times I'd walk in the room and everybody said, oh, don't talk to that guy. He only talks about one thing. And people would say to people, if he grabs me in a corner, you know, let me escape. Help me escape. Now, it's what everybody wants to talk about. But I remember when I would have press conferences and I'd look around, I remember my colleagues would sign letters with me denouncing, and when we had to do the press conference so that we could publicize the denunciation, they weren't around. I write a little bit about it in the book. If I can't write something positive, I try not to write about it in the book. I have to tell you, I'm proud of the Hispanic Congressional Caucus and my relationship. And let me say one other thing, because Joe, I think I had to. There is one person that stands out in the book of all elected officials, and it's Bob Menendez. And you know, I didn't put that in because I thought I was coming to Coral Gables, so there were going to be a bunch of Cubans in the room, okay? I didn't write that. He has been my friend from the very first day we were colleagues together. Because let me tell you something. You think I stood up to the president? He has stood up to the president of the United States. He has been in those rooms. Y el presidente, tú lo ves como lo trata. Lo trata con mucho respeto. No solo porque es senador, porque sabe que él habla para atrás, que él no aguanta. In the book, you'll read about it. I think it's incredible. See, nobody wants to sacrifice anything. Because everybody wants to go to the Christmas party. And everybody wants to get on Air Force One. No, come on, all the congressmen, right? And they want the special committee. Y si hay una comisión, they want to get named to it. Everybody, so nobody wants to cause waves. Everybody wants the committee assignment. I want to be on Ways and Means. I want to be on Energy and Commerce. I want to be on Appropriations Committee. I get all of that. That's normal. So people don't. Here's what Bob Menendez. We're with the President of the United States. It's 2011. 2 años y medio, él es presidente. And we tell him, you should use your executive authority. Joe told the president the same thing. He told the president of the United States, use his executive authority. He's a good lawyer, so he knows about those things. And we were telling the president. Now, he was telling us as a candidate, so he took a bigger risk than we did, because at least we were already elected. And the president turned around and told us, if I use it, the Republican majority will take that power away from me. That's what the president of the United States, that was his counter argument. And you know what, Bob Menendez? So, oh, no, Mr. President. I'm a U.S. Senator, and I might be running for re-election in New Jersey, where there aren't a lot of immigrants. But I will filibuster in the Senate anybody that ever attempts to take that power. He told the president, I'm going to give you the most powerful tool a politician has, the filibuster, if they try to take it away. The president still didn't use it. But did he use it the next year? Yes, because we kept going. What I like about Bob Menendez is, when we go into the room, I used to see my colleagues from the Hispanic Congression, when they didn't put little name tags, a veces ponen name tags, y no te queda remedio sentarte al lado mío. But sometimes they didn't put name tags, and we was free seating, and I would sit down. The seat next to me was the last one. No se sienta al lado de ese porque but Bob, I'm telling you, he would always sit with me. He would walk in the room with me. He would leave the room with me. And I think it's extraordinary, right? That you got this Puerto Rican kid from Chicago and you got this Cuban American from New Jersey, and they're leading the fight for comprehensive immigration reform in this nation. And so I just wanted to say that you're going to read a lot of nice things about Bob Menendez. They're all true. And I love the brother because he's just, he's a true hero. So Bob can run, other people. I will say this, and please, I know you're going to think que I don't have my feet on the ground. I'm telling you, la primera latina presidenta o el primer latino presidente ya nació. I'm telling you, believe it, ya nació. We're going to see it happen, most of us in our lifetime. It's going to be a night, we're going to turn the TV on, and you're going to say, Gutierrez dijo que había, mírala ahí. O míralo ahí. I'm telling you, mírala o mírala. I don't know if it's going to be a woman or a man. I will tell you, there are a lot more women going to college in the Latino community than men. Y las mujeres son intensamente. If a woman makes a commitment to your campaign, Congressman Garcia, and says she's going to knock on 10 doors, she's going to knock on 20. Now, you and I both know if the guy tells you he's going to knock on 10 doors, you better send him with a woman. Am I right, though? No. Am I telling the truth? It also works better. No, this is practical political advice. If it's 7 o'clock and somebody knocks on your door, hi, I'd like to talk to you about the next congressman of the 4th district. Y tú escuchas una voz de mujer. What do? You open the door. If you hear a guy, you're like, yeah, sure, Sherlock. I'm going to open up the door. La gente aprovecha y abren las puertas. It's much more comfortable. I took too long on your question, but that's not for me. What I want to do is pass comprehensive immigration reform, and then I want to come back here with Congressman Garcia, and the next time we're not going to do books. You know what we're going to do? I'm telling you. We'll have thousands of people in an auditorium organizing them so that all those rats out there that are going to come out of the woodwork to exploit them, so we can protect them. Because Joe's work and my work doesn't end when the president signs. It begins when the president. Because here's the law. The law is only as good and great as the number of people that take advantage of it. And more people will take advantage of it if we're organized. So I'm going to be back here organizing. Llenar, tú sabes la alegría que yo voy a sentir de entregar esas visas, esos formularios y llenarlos. La felicidad que yo voy a sentir de ver que esa gente ya no viven con miedo. It's going to be a great moment for us. I'm sorry, I took too long. Other questions people have.
We obviously have a bilingual crowd, así que si quieren hacer la pregunta en español, I'm sure the internet audience will be fine with that. Who's next? Señor aquí.
Usted está correcto cuando dice que probablemente la siguiente presidente de los Estados Unidos sea una mujer y que el primer presidente hispano ya nació, pero ese primer presidente hispano necesita crecer, necesita conseguir que su voz se escuche, necesita poder y que se escuche su voz necesita dinero y eso es lo que se necesita, que crezca en poder, que crezca en dinero.
Sí, mira, I agree with you. That will come. It will come. 2,000 Latinos turn 18 every day. And that's what, without one more of us coming. Si no nos llega uno más, that's going to continue. In 10 years, it'll be 2,400 a day. It's not like it's 2,000 this year and next year it'll be 1,900 a day. No. Every year it increases. You can't stop this. 2 million more Latinos voted in 208 than 204. 2 million Latinos voted in 212 than in 208. Look, I'm not a partisan guy when I say this to you. I assure you, the Republican Party is destined to become a minority party in the United States. What's the fastest growing immigrant group in the United States? It's not Latinos. It's Asians. 78% of the Asian community voted for Barack Obama. And they like to brag. Every time Joe and I tell them about how many, they go, no, you ain't got nothing on us. Women and young people, how are you going to have a party if the fastest growing group, demographic, growing, you're angering them? And I want to say this. In the end, we're going to do the right thing. Because just like look, this country, el que llega nuevo, always takes us time to accept them. It took time to accept I know the Cubans, ahora son el cheche de la película aquí en Miami. But it wasn't always like that for you in Miami. It wasn't always the red carpet. Huh? You had to fight for your position. Go back to the stories of when you came here. It's always like that. But eventually, nobody has a problem with the Cubans anymore. Que si tienen restaurante, que si quieren hablar español. Right? Nobody has a problem anymore. Thank you. And the Irish. Nobody cares. Everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. Right? Does anybody get angry at, those Italians, they're so ethnic. They have to celebrate Columbus Day. No. All the politicians go and show up to Columbus Day. English isn't a threat. We buried more languages in the United States than any other modern civilization. Tell me another modern civilization that has buried as many languages as the United States. Huh? They're having a little trouble with Spanish. Huh? Right? But the Germans, the Poles, just think about it. The Greek, the languages disappear. And we're having a great degree of difficulty with it too. And it will happen. My grandson, his dad, is from Guerrero, Mexico. Se llama Ecliserio Figueroa. Wonderful son-in-law that I have. And my grandson, él lo entiende. Los muchachitos hoy, ¿tú crees que no entienden? Ellos entienden. That's why I'm telling you, when they're turning 18, we think, no, they understand. The other day, he likes messing with me, with his grandpa. I don't know why. Lo ha cogido conmigo. Luisito, a fin de cuentas. You know what he told me? He tells me, Grandpa, that baseball, that's all right. The Cubans will like this one because you have some affinity with baseball. Because I know you all don't play that much soccer either. And he says, baseball, you got to wait for 9 guys, and then you get it's boring. Maybe the ball comes out to you. Unless you're the pitcher, you're not doing something, or the catcher. He says, now soccer, you're always on the field, Grandpa. You're either trying to get the ball to score or you're defending. There's something always, never a boring moment, Grandpa. And I think, why does he do that? He does that to mess with me. Because he doesn't say it to my wife. A su abuela, él no le hace eso. So I told the guy, I said, hey, he's trying to say that he ain't Puerto Rican, that he's Mexican, that he likes soccer. And you know what he says? Oh, Grandma, I'm just kidding. But the other day I asked him, I said, Luisito, so how do you feel today? He says, you know, Grandpa, my right side feels Mexican. My left side, it feels Puerto Rican. Mira que reflejo de un niño. But right here, I feel real American. You know, because the kids, it's not like when we grew up where nobody made us feel proud of who we were, of our culture, no, it wasn't a sense of pride. Sometimes we had to hide it. Oh, learn English and don't speak Spanish and don't try to be too Latino and, shave the mustache off and don't try to be too ethnic because ethnic doesn't, right? No, the kid understands that. Lastly, I'm going to tell you. So I told him, I said, Luisito, aren't you going to get a car when you're 18? He goes, oh, yeah, Grandpa. I said, describe it. He says, oh, it's white with leather seats. I said, it's not sunroof. And Grandpa, it's convertible. Of course, he's describing my car. And I said, so let me ask you something, because I know, the Mexican part's real heavy with you. And he goes, yeah, Grandpa. And I go, if there's a key to the car that has a Mexican flag on it and a key with a Puerto Rican flag on it, which one you think is going to start that car? And he says, Grandpa, that's easy, the one with the Puerto Rican key. I said, why is it so easy? Because you paid for the car, Grandpa. Now, but listen to kids. If you listen to kids, they tell you that things are getting better, that they're appreciating, they're not forgetting their roots, right? They're still, yo creo que hay una tremenda. Next question. I'm sorry, I take too long. Please, another question.
Anyone else want to raise their hand? Next question? Over here? All right.
Congressman, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your service to our country. I would like to thank you very much for your service to immigrants, especially when you don't have to deal with this. Being Puerto Rican, you're not part of the immigrant experience. And what you're doing is fantastic. And I do have to say to Congressman Garcia that he's wrong about making us walk with women, because we would knock on hundreds of doors for her. Okay? I don't care. And Joe knows it too.
I know that.
Okay? Yeah, and make all the phone calls,
That's right.
Congressman, a lot of us, I assume everybody in this room, have already gone through the immigration process. We already integrated into society. I already paid my debt to this country with service in the military, college graduate, blah, blah, blah. And, I feel extremely American, and I have not lost my culture. I have not lost my background. But history says, okay, that in a couple generations, just like the Irish and the Germans and the Poles, are accepted into this country. Yet there is a level of ethnocentrism in this country, especially among the ultra-conservatives. They hate us. They don't want us here.
Let me try to answer your pronouncement this way.
Thank you, sir.
Let me just try to say this. Look, things are going to change. My grandson is different than my daughter's, and his children are going to be different than him. That's the natural course of stuff. That's what the reason the United States of America survives is because we change. We adapt, cogemos costumbre, cogemos ciertas cosas, ciertas canciones, cierta música, cierta poesía. We take some. We don't take all. We mix it in, and it's the way it works. And there'll be immigrants coming to this country forever, because that's the way this country's going to work. But let me just say, you're right. And Joe, but what Joe understands is that without an immigration policy, there is not a Cuban community that could come to the United States and seek a better life and freedom for themselves and a better position. Mira, en español hay emigración, right? And what does that mean? That my parents were Puerto Ricans and citizens, pero emigraron a los Estados Unidos. No inmigraron, emigraron como migrantes. And you know where Puerto Ricans worked? If you would study the history of Puerto Ricans, they worked in the tobacco fields in Connecticut. They picked tomatoes. They came to work in the fields. That they're not working today in the fields, they're not. Mi abuelita, she used to sew gloves in Aguadilla. And those gloves eran cosidos a mano. And then they were sold in the nicest stores in New York City. And she came to work in the garment industry. My wife doesn't work, and my daughter's at LSU getting her PhD. But Joe understands it. So you know what Joe and I think what we're a reflection of? We're a reflection of our moms and our dads and our history and our background. So, you know, we don't, a lot of people, look, a lot of kids today, I'm going to tell you, my kids, my daughter, she lives on the first floor. We live on the, she's 34 years old with her husband. Ella vive en el primer piso. Esa mujer no quiere vivir lejos de sus padres. And my other daughter, oh, she's at LSU, and she's coming back to, you know, we're still got a lot of things that make us who we are. And I think we're going to keep a lot of those traditions. Last question, and then we'll try to, oh, okay, I'm sorry. We got two.
Luis, en un escenario, 4 o 8 años más adelante, nosotros pues como hispanos sabemos que eres una cabeza visible. Si te apoyáramos para que llegara a Casablanca, ¿tú qué pensarías?
Mira, gracias. Y déjame decirle que me honran muchas personas cuando me dicen eso. Y eres la segunda persona y me pasa donde quiera que yo voy. Pero yo lo que quiero es organizar 11 millones de personas, buscarse su legalización. Y si yo tomo un momento pensando en otra cosa, como me siento desacreditado, como siento que no estoy en mi misión, ¿verdad? Es como que mi misión es esa. And I don't want to think about anything else because you have to be laser focused because our enemies, they're strong and they're laser focused. So I'm going to stay laser focused. I'm not going to think about anything else. Okay? That's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to spend a couple of years, maybe more than 2 years, as long as it takes to integrate. Do you know, Joe, how long is it going to take us to integrate them fully? I mean, really integrate them. Getting jobs, health care, learning English, learning the culture, not being afraid of the government, immunizations. I mean, just the acculturation and integration. Right, you saw how hard it is, right? You saw how hard it is. Tenían 4 años y esa computadora no deja que la gente coja Obamacare. No. So just think of when the 11 million try to sign up. Y va a estar el buitre por ahí. ¿Y ustedes usan esa expresión, el buitre? No, va a estar, ay, sí, pues el buitre es malo. Porque, y van a tratar de estafar la gente. Y tú vas a prender la radio. Venga por aquí a la esquina, que nosotros vamos a llenar los papeles buenos, rápido y gratis. Right? You know, dan un pronto pago de 149, and then it's 149, it's 149. And you know what they're going to, y los latinos somos notorios por los notarios. Porque en toda Latinoamérica, we get here and we think a notario is what? A lawyer. But here, it's like some guy that went to the Secretary of State and got a little stamp. And they act. And it's going to be really hard. So lo que yo quiero hacer es eso. Y yo te voy a llenar de felicidad. And then the next thing I want to do, after we've done that part, is see, one of the things about politics is, it's not like being a professor. Because if I was a professor, I would have taken a sabbatical. But you can't take one. Like Joe can't say, oh, I'm going to be there 10 years and then take a sabbatical and come back. Viene el próximo y te dice adiós. You no puedes soltar. So there's no sabbaticals in this. So I want to finish it, and then we get the thing done. And I think that's the way my mom and dad would have wanted me. I know my dad. I'm going to tell you something. My dad died 2 years ago when I was starting to write this book. Él murió. Y lo va a leer en el último capítulo. And I got to tell you something. Yo fui. Era noviembre, maybe you had the same experience, Congressman. It was November of 92. I went back to Puerto Rico. I had just gotten elected. And my mom, being my mom, Doña Nini, ¿verdad? Y Tetén era el nombre de mi papá. You can't make up those names. Nini y Tetén, ¿verdad? They invited the whole neighborhood. Mira que si seguro social, cualquier problema de esos federal, viene el hijo mío aquí y esto lo va a resolver. No, that's my mom, right? She's proud. So, you know, invite everybody. I haven't gotten sworn in yet. Y tenía mucho quesito, ¿verdad? Y mucha café y galletita. Invitaron. We were tired. At the end of the day, we were just exhausted from so many people coming to congratulate us, ¿verdad? It's like el hijo pródigo regresa a San Sebastián del Pepino, el gringo. He did good. He learned Spanish and got elected to the Congress, right? Y ahora la gente importante del pueblo, yo soy quizás un poquito más importante que ellos. So it's funny the way the world works, right? Because I couldn't go out with their daughters, right? Because, las clases sociales, eso es una cosa increíble en Latinoamérica. We don't suffer it as much here, Congressman, as you do in Latin America. There's a pretty rigid class society de la gente que tiene, la clase media, y después están todos los demás. Y los niños no se asocian, ni salen. Y no se casan entre sí. Y cuando se casan, it's like Romeo and Juliet. It really is. It's really a Shakespearean drama. So, I just want to say that, ¿qué me dijo mi papá? After everybody left. Porque mi papá me lo dijo de esa manera. Mi papá me hablaba, no es para que yo le contestara, no para que él supiera mi opinión sobre lo que él dijo. Él simplemente quiere que yo escuchara. Dice, mira, las cosas te han ido bien, ¿verdad? Fuiste electo al Congreso. Pero ¿sabe algo? Te quejaste mucho cuando te traje aquí, ¿sabes? Yo me recuerdo todos los días que si no podía hablar español, que si los muchachos se portaban mal contigo, que si no encontraba novia, que si la música era en español, que tú lo querías en inglés, que los amigos tuyos te hacían falta, que todo lo terrible que era este sitio. Pero si yo no te hubiese traído aquí, tú no eres quien eres hoy. Tú aprendiste mucho aquí. Habla español mejor que el contrincante tuyo, eso te sirve muy bien. Y eres bien puertorriqueño porque viviste aquí conmigo. Y te aprendiste lo que es de aquí. La gente te aprecia y te quiere porque ven un ejemplo de latino. Porque te traje aquí. Déjame decirte, fue lo mejor que te pudo haber pasado. And that was my dad, right? And then it was like the end of the conversation. Because it wasn't like, oh, let me answer. And then, you know, he just said, you want to play some dominoes? It was like, he cambió la conversación because my dad was like that. You know, he had a thought, he'd give it to you, and he moved on. It was a very structured, right? He was in charge, and it was his opinion. And I always respected it. But you know something? It was the best thing that happened to me. Let me just say to everybody, yo me alegro mucho que viví esos 6 años en Puerto Rico. Porque las idiosincrasias, el lenguaje, las cuestiones culturales, yo creo que yo me puedo comunicar con la gente gracias a esos 6 años. Porque yo no viví en San Juan, yo viví en el campo, en San Sebastián del Pepino, donde se cortaba caña, donde se cosechaba café. Era un ambiente bien agrícola. Yo le pagaba a los hombres de la caña, yo era pagador. I wish you could see their hands. I wish you could see their hands. It would transform their hands. Con su machete al lado, con su paño aquí, cortando caña todo el día, porque eso era lo único. And you know what I thought to myself? I said, all that lies that Puerto Ricans are lazy, because I don't see no lazy Puerto Ricans here. I see men that work really hard, cosechando café, trabajando la tierra. Eso ya no se hace, pero se hacía cuando yo estaba ahí. So, I guess my answer to you is, look, my dad told me, right, that I had accomplished a lot. I'm very much who I am. You know, you want to be president, you gotta you can't be me, okay? I'm just, okay, I like this. You know, I thought a long time ago, I've watched Latinos that are successful, that kind of mainstream. I can't talk like them. I could learn to talk like them, but it would just be difficult. And I really like the way I get to talk, right? Porque me expreso sin pensar que si estoy molestando o no estoy molestando. And the other thing is, si donde quiera que yo voy, la gente se sonríen, donde quiera que yo voy, ¿sabes lo que yo recibo? Sonrisa. Sonrisa. Gracias. Estábamos, right? Gracias. Everywhere there's Latinos. I went to go get a bagel yesterday. There were 6. La señora China. She was in charge. La chinita estaba in charge. And there were 6 Latinas. And they all stopped working and came around the counter to take a picture. You know, I already became president. Really. Last question. Last question.
All right, so just a reminder for the folks watching on the internet at home, if you call the number on your screen, you can purchase a copy of the book in Spanish or in English, and Congressman Gutierrez will sign it for you. For those of you here in the house with us tonight, the books in Spanish and English are for sale at the counter over there.